All right. Welcome, 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 everyone, to the Dildo Dilemma Humor in the Face of Trauma podcast. My name is Lita Mae Button. I am a boxing coach and motivational speaker and soon to be published author. If you have not already, please make sure you like and follow on Facebook if you're watching this, and smash that subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching there. Please and thank you. I want you to imagine being paralyzed by fear because every step you've taken forwards up to this point in your life was blocked with the obstacles that lived inside: doubt, insecurities, feelings of abandonment. That was me from the age of 16 to 22. Then, bam, life sucker punched me, and I became a single parent to my son with a lifelong and at times life-threatening blood disorder called hemophilia B. And I knew that I needed to deal with the life obstacles that were inside of me to be strong and help him grow into a productive and well-adjusted adult. So I began boxing competitively. And through one punch, one competition, and overcoming one fear at a time, I did it. I learned how to punch back at life, absorbing the shock of life's blows and channeling that energy from those blows into empowering myself by tackling those fears in the ring, which rippled out into my everyday life, giving me the confidence to live life on my own terms, and most importantly, giving me the why to role model for my son and be that number one role model for him. And if the need should arise, protect us. And it's why I'm a motivational speaker and boxing coach. I help women who've experienced trauma and violence to regain their confidence and trust in themselves through boxing. Because I know the end result when you're empowered as a woman on every level of being, and you take the steps to channel and bring out the power from inside of you, it has a rippling effect that the world needs to heal. Because when a woman empowers herself first and foremost, she shows, nurtures onto others what is possible, and it teaches us how to treat each other with love, kindness, and compassion. And the world needs this more than ever, especially when it comes to ending violence against women. So if you're joining and watching today, it's why I'm doing the weekly podcast and movement called Dildo Dilemma, Humor in the Face of Trauma, which is about the power of stories, humor, and boxing to bring about awareness, advocacy, and action taking to help eliminate violence against women in Newfoundland and worldwide. And in case you're wondering why Newfoundland, well, two reasons. It's my home and it's my family's home, and it's today's guest home as well. And I recently found out in the last few months that violence against women statistically in Newfoundland is higher than the rest of Canada. 1 in 2 women over the age of 15 will experience a form of stalking or violence in their lifetime. And I want to help make lasting changes for my family now and my grandkids that would be born in the future. And to make changes in our life, we first have to focus on what's going on inside and closest around us. Second, if you are not familiar with Newfoundland, Newfoundland is just plain awesome. It's Canada's most eastern province that is an island of just over 500,000 people with its own time zone and the name of towns like Blow Me Down, and Dildo. However, there's an imposter in 2019 that came along by the name of Jimmy Kimmel who claimed himself as the honorary mayor of our town of Dildo. Yet not once has he visited Dildo or even stepped foot into Newfoundland. And now I've found out in the last month that there's another guy named Jerry D, who's also not a Newfoundlander, and he's trying to take a run for the mayorship of Dildo. And in upcoming comedy shows that he has here in the next few months, he's not even coming to Newfoundland to showcase his comedy. I really think it's time to put a woman in charge to advocate for Newfoundland. Shall we say it's a real dildo dilemma? Dare I say it? Hashtag Lita Mae Button. Hashtag Mayor of Dildo. Hashtag woman in charge. So let us welcome today's guest, Dawn Evans. Dawn is a tax specialist, financial empowerment enthusiast. I love those words, empowerment enthusiast. And owner of TaxWise. Thank you so much, Dawn, for being our special guest here today on Dildo Dilemma. Would you let us know a little bit about you and why you said yes to coming on to this podcast today?
Thank you for that introduction. So I actually didn't know a lot about you. I seen a post and I watched your most recent podcast with Stephanie, and I was like, okay, I need to be in on that. Um, that was basically as far as it went. And I love that you do boxing. So I guess, like you said, I'm a tax specialist. That's sort of my day job. And I run a company called TaxWise. But I also, I guess I'm an author. I have a published book as well. And yeah, I guess I've been through a pretty nasty separation, divorce the last few years. And I know like I did some kickboxing and
Yeah.
yeah, and it changed me. And it's funny because I'm not, you know, I'm a pretty nerdy person. I like to be like curled up with a book. It doesn't seem to fit me, the kickboxing persona, but it was
I understand.
life-changing to let all that rage out in like a really healthy and productive way and to feel strong and to feel like impact like it did. It just brought out a sense of empowerment for me. Yeah, and it changed how I viewed the world and letting myself feel that kind of anger and rage, which was very justified with what I was going through. Um, it just it once I got close enough to the rage and I let it move, it's like you didn't deserve that. That was the message of the rage. And I feel like if I didn't take the time and let myself feel through all that and to express it, through kickboxing, I don't know that I ever would have stood up for myself in the ways that I did. So I love that you teach that. Um, anyway, that was part of why I chose to come on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess I work in finance, obviously. So I've heard so many stories, and I feel like the financial part of abuse is really missing from the conversation around, gender-based violence, because it plays a role in, I'd say, 80 to 90% of cases. Like, and there are so many women who never leave these relationships at all because they don't have the capability to keep a roof over their heads and food in the fridge without a partner.
Yeah.
And so my mission is to help women really understand, to be empowered financially and
Yeah.
um yeah, just to because knowledge is power when it comes to these things, like especially around finance, if you don't know what you're entitled to, if you can't earn a good living by yourself, if you can't, manage your bills and your household things, I mean, you're in a weaker position and you're going to end up being, you're vulnerable. And there, as much as I would like to say that we live in a world where you can be vulnerable and be okay, it's not the reality for a lot of people, those are the people that abusers tend towards. They like people who are vulnerable. So that's why I do what I do, I guess. And I guess speaking out about this is really a new thing for me. I've been having these conversations with women as part of my work for
Yeah.
the last 10 years. But it's only the last couple of years that I've really started to speak out about my own story and my own experiences. And hearing people, come to me afterward and say how validated they felt or how not alone they felt, it changed my perspective on it. There's so much secrecy and shame and all this around like having financial struggles or having, these, yeah, like we shame ourselves so much for our reactions to the abuse when really there's no other way to react sometimes, Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. that's kind of why I do what I do. I'm still very much getting started when it comes to this. I have big plans.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the financial piece of divorce and separation of relationships, it needs to be spoken about, and it like the taboo needs to go away so that we can actually have legitimate conversations about solutions. Yeah.
Safe and conversations like we're having in this moment to educate and empower other women because myself included is like finances growing up with finances it's not a is even more kind of shameful conversations or we don't talk about that conversations more so than sex in society so like these things come up and it is a key social determinant in life to help you be able to either survive or thrive. And it's a power dynamic in these relationships. Besides the fact physical power dynamic, it's financial power dynamic, right? We all know I'm not talking about politics so much, but he that shall not be named, who is completely like in the news all the time right now because second time in presidency, it's about money dynamics and money power, that's at the extreme end, right? And so it is about money is about power for a lot of when it's used for senses of abuse. So how did you kind of start noticing that this was a theme with the women that you were working with?
I mean, I've seen it, I guess I've seen it on a, hmm, I guess it's like I've heard the stories, and it wasn't until I went through it myself that I
Mhm.
kind of realized the real trend. And then I started to look up some statistics, and I'm like, holy crap. So it's not just like the women who were coming to my workplace, it's not just the people in my friend groups. Like, this is a widespread problem. And it's not even, and the way the court handles a lot of these things, especially around separations. It's meant to create equality, but it actually further, creates further issues and inequality. Um, yeah, so I feel like I was having the conversations for many years, and I sort of dealt with each one as though they were separate. Um, And then it wasn't until I went through it myself that I really started to piece together, like, oh, this is a real, real huge problem. And like, these are only the women who openly talk to me about it. How many are struggling that don't talk about it? And, I'm a safe place, I guess. And like I've got that sort of reputation or energy. I don't know what it is about me, but I go to like the grocery store to buy milk and people are telling me their deepest, darkest traumas. Like, this is who I am. So I've always kind of heard the stories and been a safe place for them to land, I guess. And like I don't judge anybody for anything. Um, and I think that's why people open up to me so much. But yeah, it wasn't until I really started to go through it myself and then seeing, yeah, like there were women who helped me through it. My closest friend, Lucy, like she sort of, she had just gotten her divorce when we met. So she'd kind of helped me through some of the legal parts and it was really, really helpful. And I'm like, everybody needs a Lucy. Like, how do we get more of that energy out into the world? Like more safe places to say what you're genuinely struggling with.
Yeah, we've seen
And
the guy with diamonds.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of why I talk about it and why I've started to like even advertise like sessions where people can come and talk about the finances of separation and divorce. And, there's so many tax
Like,
implications that people don't really know.
so you
And
mean like a support group that is like both supportive and educational that you started? Is
so
that
it's actually like an hour-long one-on-one session. So it's sort of like an advisory session, I call them. But where we can talk about anything to do with finances and separation. So it could be like, who claims what on your tax return for kids and child support and, what you're entitled to for, how do you handle like childcare expenses? Who pays for it? Who, all these questions that people have that no one's talking about and afraid to ask. And unfortunately, lawyers don't always give great information. I've gotten some really atrocious advice from my lawyers on the financial side of things, and even some just plain wrong advice,
Yeah.
because I know the tax side of things. And yeah, like there were things, I guess there were things I was the primary parent to start with. So there are things in terms of like who claims the kids on their tax returns was supposed to be me. Who gets child support was supposed to be me because I was a primary parent. They were with me most of the time. But my lawyer was trying to like use some of these things as negotiating chips, sort of, in like, so for example, I get to claim the kids on my tax return, but she was trying to say like we could, he could claim them and then it would sort of offset child support in a way. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. I was having to explain some tax things to my lawyer who I was paying. I'm like, this is not okay.
Right.
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense at all. That
no.
no, so they don't the did you bring this up to your lawyer? Like,
Yeah, so I
yeah,
told her, I'm like, no, they're with me full time. Like, this is what I'm entitled to, this, and this.
right.
And yeah, and she was like, oh, okay. And then that was sort of it. There wasn't even an apology or like you know, yeah, it was just such a really hard situation when like the person you're going to advice was giving such terrible advice. And not
Yeah.
even just about
But
the numbers, but about communication. And
yeah.
like, oh, you need to have like conversations with him. I'm like, do you think I haven't tried that already? Like,
Mm.
there's like, yeah, and being criticized in court, um, for having to go to court to deal with these ridiculous things. But I mean, there is no other option, right? When
Yeah.
you're trying to have one-on-one conversations with my ex and they don't go anywhere, and then we tried to do it via lawyers and still nothing was resolved. I mean, court is the only option there. And then to be criticized for not communicating with him better, like it was really, really hard for me to handle. Yeah, just the way that the entire negotiation process went, like it really wasn't okay at all. And it's
So,
unfortunate, it's really
yeah.
unfortunate.
And these are conversations that I keep, like there's future podcast guests that will be coming that it's like this is the financial aspect, but then the abuse aspect, um,
Mhm.
that there's a really major disconnect in the court system and the people who are in the court system, having to use it. And so from your perspective, what do you think that could have been done much better to help the
I
transition?
think even just, I feel like we were kind of, and maybe this was my interpretation, but it really felt like we were kind of an annoyance to the court, that they were having to, my ex didn't provide his tax documents and all these things that are very basic, like they're basic. Like this is what is supposed to, he provides his tax stuff, I provide mine. Then we work out the numbers. Like it's supposed to be very simple and straightforward. But when he didn't provide his, and then he continued to lie about his income and provide fraudulent documents, like it was delayed and delayed, and we had to keep going back and keep going back. And like we were both criticized for having wasting the court's time when I wasn't, like all of my documents were in. But it was like we were both being reprimanded for wasting the court's time with this stuff. And yeah, I felt like that was really, really hard for me. I mean, I don't want to be in court. Nobody wants to
No,
go
I
there.
mean, especially when you're a parent and you're running a business and,
Yeah.
life, like that takes up a lot of time.
It does. And it's, extremely emotional and getting all the paperwork together. And yeah, it was just such a long and drawn out and really like I still don't have proper child support numbers calculated. Like there's still nothing done. I still don't have a divorce. I still don't have proper custody papers for my kids. Like it's been 5 years and we've had regular court dates and still nothing's really done. And I feel like if there was more like punitive measures for people who don't comply. Like he hasn't provided his documents or he significantly delayed it and then provided fraudulent documents. I don't understand why there's no consequence to that. Like why there's no consequence. Like he just gets told to do it again and then gets another 6 months while like I'm the one who's suffering financially, and I'm having to pay my lawyer to deal with it and you know.
So what's the advice that you've come across in working with your clients who are dealing with these kind of similar financial situations now that you've had that personal experience yourself? Have you kind of changed the professional advice that you give them from before this experience to after?
Yeah, I feel like number one, I feel like knowing what you're entitled to walking in makes a huge difference. You're not going in feeling like you're begging for things or asking for things.
Mm.
This is the law. So I feel like knowing where you stand, it changes how you approach the entire legal system, how you approach your lawyers, how you ask for things. I think that was really, really huge for me is knowing what I was entitled to before I even spoke to my lawyer. Like I needed to know it for myself. Um, and I think too is, I kind of put so much energy and focus on that. I'm like, if I can get the support stuff straightened away and if I can get all this financial stuff legally done, then I will be okay financially. And I put all my focus and energy there. I feel like if I had put way less energy on that and focus more on myself and my business and growing my own income, I would have been so much better off. But like that sense of fairness really got in the way. Like it didn't feel right to let him away with it, like these are our children. So I felt a lot of, yeah, like the injustice of it all really ate at me a lot. And I wish I'd kind of let that go earlier and just focused on what I wanted the outcome to be, which is to be financially well and to be independent. And I wasn't getting that through the court at all. And like, I wish not that I shouldn't have ever gone for the support or anything. I don't know that that's the case, but I wish I didn't put so much focus and energy on that and so much, I guess, like putting all my eggs in one basket. I wish I didn't put like that being fixed would be like the thing that saves my finances because it wasn't. And I really kind of sunk myself in a lot of ways, with legal fees and time missed for court and all this stuff. I wish I'd, yeah, put less focus on the court stuff and put more focus on my personal financial picture and like worked more towards that.
Yeah. So when women come along and they're having these conversations with you, this is you am I hearing you correctly that you're giving them the wisdom and the advice through experience and professionally that it's like just a step that they have to take, but it's not a step that they should get lost in or like completely because they looking after themselves first and foremost, especially if they're mothers,
Yeah.
is how it's going to propel and move them forwards from the situation.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's not even like to dash their hopes about the court or like that you should stop asking for what you're entitled to. It's really just, I guess, to have more realistic expectations about the timeline and about what it costs to actually get what you're entitled to.
Yeah.
Um, I really believed that if you like brought fraudulent text documents into a courtroom, that something would happen, but it didn't. And like I was really, really baffled by the fact that he got away with so much and for so long.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wish I'd had a bit more realistic expectations about what a court could and would do to help me. It's unfortunate that they can't do more or they couldn't do more. But I mean, it is
Yeah.
the reality for a lot of women, and a lot of women don't ever get the support they're entitled to. And even if they do, their partners probably don't pay it.
Yeah.
I read a statistic. I read a statistic recently that only 40% in 2022, only 40% of support cases registered with support enforcements actually got their payments on time every month for the full year. So that 60% of support recipients don't get their money reliably or get it at all. I
Yeah.
mean, those are huge numbers, right? So if you're putting all your eggs in the basket of my ex needs to pay support and this is how I'm going to live, I mean, you've got some problems, right? And I feel like even though it is legal, it's the law and you're entitled to it and all this, I believe the reality is that we need to have our own safety net. That's
Yeah,
something.
our own safety net, our empower ourselves first and foremost. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When my son was about 2, 3 months, I went through the court systems, and it was a very his father never showed up to court, and
Mhm.
I was upset, and I knew I wasn't going to be getting much if I was lucky to get any at all, which I barely got anything over the years. Um, and yeah, I got like two payments out of the whole entire 18 years. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is what a lot of people deal with, right? And,
Right.
I've seen so many intelligent women who know that their exes are manipulating it and not paying on time, and they still sort of plan their finances as though it will be there, and I've seen and I've heard it from some men too. Like I know there was this one woman I worked with, and she bought a new car, like new to her car, and her ex stopped making payments on his child support for like 3 or 4 months to try and make her default on the loan. And like he clearly told her this was his intent, but like nothing ever happened. By the time she told her lawyer and her lawyer told his lawyer, and then they got a court date, like he'd paid up by then, so nothing ever came of it. And like this is the stuff that people do and they get away with it. So if you're like planning your financial picture as though the money is going to be there all the time, every time, you've got a little issue. You know, you don't want
Good.
to depend on people who are purposely not dependable, like you have to accept who they are and what their history has been with payments and sort of plan adjust accordingly, not about what they should pay, but what they realistically will pay
So
and
then
kind
you're
of make your budgets around that.
empowering yourself on your own money story, which is
Yeah.
which is something that you're definitely doing and doing for others, Dawn. So that's absolutely amazing. And the best piece of advice that one of the best pieces of advice I've been given over the years was from my lawyer who helped me through the situation. She said, because she knew how upset I was, and she said, you can't like revenge is not going to help you. She's like, the best thing that you can do with the situation in the way it is, she said, is succeed. And it was like, that was like a mantra in my head for years. And you're still a mantra in my head, but it's a little different because my son's much older now. But it's so important, like with women in your situation, that pass on that wisdom and knowledge to give other women who are going through the trenches of like looking for hope and knowledge to be able to help empower themselves. That is so like going to help, prevent being proactive in terms of it happening to another woman.
And it's like it's a story that women have been fed for a really long time. I remember like after we separated, early after the separation, and how many people, especially older women, who were incredibly worried for me to be a single woman living alone, like incredibly worried about it. And like his grandmother, even, God bless her heart, she was trying to like set me up with her hairdresser's son like 2 weeks after I separated from him. And like, but like just such, there's like this, idea that a woman needs a man to be financially okay. And like it's an old story, and it was true for a very long time and for many generations. But and it's why so many women get into trouble in the beginning, like I need a savior, I need a rich husband, I need a whatever to be okay. But I feel like if we spent more time building our own resources and our own skills and our own, you know, like our own financial security, and I mean, it's not that it's easy. It isn't. Like living in a one income household is not the same as living in a two-income household. I mean, I understand that. Like it's definitely a harder thing to do to be a single person. Um, but it's doable. It's completely doable.
It makes you figure things out a lot more than if you're relying on on other people. But
Yeah.
there's a double-edged sword to it, having done it for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Emotionally resilient, but also makes you, it's harder for you to ask for help because you get used to doing things on your own, and it
Mhm.
just becomes a way of being. But asking for help and looking for others and realizing that there are people out there that you can trust is very important to move that needle forward.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely.
so I want to come back to the financial security part conversation, but we're gonna have a little bit of a dildo dilemma educational break here for a couple minutes.
Lighten it up.
So lighten it up, and I'm gonna share some new statistics I found at the end here today. But well, first back to our dildo dilemma educational break, everyone. So in prehistoric and ancient Egyptian times, so 2000 before Christ, BC, the Egyptians had depictions of sexual practices in their art. God love the Egyptians, including objects resembling dildos. And some of these were made of materials like wood, ivory, and stone. In ancient Egyptian culture, sex toys were often linked to fertility and reproductive rituals. And we're going to bring this into a little bit of education with our beloved town of Newfoundland called Dildo. The name itself has been documented on maps since the 1700s, since the 1700s. So people before Jimmy Kimmel's famous Hollywood sign came in 2019, people would actually visit a dildo to take a picture of the sign of the town name on the side of the road. Over the last year, doing some research on that, that's a number of older pictures on the internet of the original sign. So that's name itself started getting historic landmarks for history on paper and maps in the 1700s. So back to Dawn. Dawn, you mentioned about taking empowerment of our own financial security. What three tips would you share for women listening and watching that would help them protect or be proactive about this financial abuse, or there's another word that manipulation that could potentially happen in these situations?
I feel like for women who are with a partner, I feel like shared credit is probably, yeah, it's such a huge thing. I've seen so many cases where like, you have like a shared car loan or a shared, or even you just like co-sign on something that they want, and then when you separate, they just stop paying the bill. Or like, I've seen that so often. Cell phones, even though they're not a huge expense, I've heard hundreds of stories of people just like running up cell phone bills and leaving it and all this stuff, or taking phones and not giving them back. Like, I know you can save an extra $5 or $10 a month by sharing a plan, but like I've seen so many go south that like shared credit of any type is, yeah, I've just seen so much abuse from that. And like and it's usually towards women. Like they have their credits ruined over stuff like this, and then they're trying to like get a house on their own later and can't do it, or all this stuff, like it just, shared credit is a big one. I feel like um hmm, yeah, I feel like women tend to, I know I did, um, like we kind of put our partners first. Like while we were together, I really encouraged my ex to do, like he was a carpenter, and I really encouraged him to go and do his journeyman certificate. And like his income went significantly up and up after we had children. Whereas I stopped. I didn't, I'd always wanted to do further designations with my accounting work, and I wanted to do other things, and I didn't do those. Um, so I sort of put his earning potential ahead of mine. And, I, at the time I was like, I thought we were a team and that he would help, that me helping increase his earning ability would help me. Because we were a family and we were all together. But it really, I think that was one thing. Yeah, I wish all the way along that I'd put more energy into my own I didn't even have my own bank account. Like we had one joint banking account and I had a little bit of savings, but really, like, I really viewed our finances as one unit. And I, yeah. And the other thing I feel is more of a mindset thing more than a practical thing, but it's like viewing the person who earns the most as having the most say in financial decisions. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel like most couples have that dynamic to one degree or another. Especially when there's like one parent who's staying at home with children who decides to work part-time because of children. I feel like it's, like the work, and it's usually women who do it, like the parenting work and the housekeeping work and all the things that we do to keep life running. There's no value put on that. And there's very much like, well, I earn more and you stay at home and do nothing. Like that sort of dynamic and mindset. And it's, from both partners buy into it or they wouldn't stay in it.
Yeah.
But it's such a harmful, I think this is like the prerequisite really for the type of divorce that I had. Like that dynamic throughout the relationship. So I feel like it's not a tactical step. It's not a dollar thing, but if you can shift your own mindset about what the disparity in income really means in your relationship and start to separate yourself from the stories you hear about it.
Yeah.
I feel like in my situation, there was like he made significantly more than me. And there was the idea that like if he wanted to go and buy like a new side by side, like I really got bullied into a lot of those things because he worked hard and it was his money and he deserved it and da da da. And and I was at home doing nothing and all these ideas, even though I did work and like, I chose work that was seasonal because childcare was so expensive and like we made it work, but he didn't view the childcare savings as anything in the conversation. That didn't matter. Um, and my opinions about money didn't really matter as much because he earned more.
That's interesting because you're the one that's educated on money
Yeah,
matters.
and I paid all the bills. So like, and the story was always that I was really controlling with the money because, we had a lot of debt together because he wanted to buy a lot of things.
Mm.
And, I was always the nag and the bitch and the stuck in the mud and all this for like saying no to buying more things on credit that we couldn't pay for. It was like he spent the money, but then I was the problem for not handling the debt better. Like that was sort of how it all went.
Yeah, and unfolded that way.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say here is that the three things that women need to look out for when they're entering a relationship or the relationship they're in now to be able to and protect themselves. And it's not, and when I say this, whoever's listening to this, is that it's not about doomsday, it's about practicality, right? And because these stories are so common. Like I had a woman that I worked with back in university college. She was married for 40 something years in the same situation, like didn't handle the finances, nothing. The husband looked after everything. And then he ended up leaving her after 40 plus years. They had kids and she had nothing set up for herself. And all of a sudden she's working in a like part-time, full-time minimum wage job with college students, because she did not empower herself. So these experiences from other women for younger women now, I think it's a little more acceptable for younger women to empower themselves, but it's still, no matter what stage of life you are as a woman, is understanding that putting your credit and your financial needs first by managing and keeping your accounts separate helps a lot of financial strife in the future, right? And then two, understanding that your what you earn and looking after yourself and your earnings first and foremost, pay yourself first. That's important in financial education. And then three, understanding your value with the work that you do, even though there is no actual, like, time is the most precious resource in this life. I don't think a lot of people fully realize that until they're at their end of their time, whatever that may be. So if you're putting in the time to nurture and grow something, understand that that is of value as well. And I don't like it's I know that these are very messy conversations, right?
They
So, but
are. Yeah, and like that last topic, I mean, I hear it like almost every day from like couples because I mean, I have to, I know people's incomes. Like I do taxes, so I know their marital status, I know their jobs, I know like I know a lot, a lot of people. So it's not just me and my experiences, and it's not from like a theoretical point of view. Like I've heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories, and like there's so much commonality. And that idea that like he makes more and I stay home and look after the kids, or even if it's I work part-time or I have more flexible work, like women have been the ones to do that, to make the sacrifices when children come along. And,
because
there's
natural, yeah.
yeah, and there's just not enough, I feel like women need to value the work that they do in parenting and in housekeeping and all this. And I feel like men do as well. And I do see there's, as a trend, there's much more, it's much more commonplace for men to be more equal in parenting and such now, but it's far from being across the board, it's still very much.
We have a long way to go still. We've come
Yeah,
a
I mean,
long way, but we still have a long way to go. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like that very much in the boxing world for women. Like I educate people on boxing all the time for women's boxing because it was the first Olympic sport for men, and last Olympic sport for equality, both men and women in the Olympics. Yeah, so
interesting.
we've come a long way. There's six figure making six women are making six figure in the sport, but it's few and far between. So it's the same analogy with equality and women in society. We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of ways to go and systems that need to be changed. Like the court system is such a huge thing from what I'm hearing, like from
It
like
is.
and professionals like yourself. And then Lynn Moore was a lawyer that was on a few weeks as well. And the court system for abuse is it's all intertwined, right? So it's a lot.
It
Uh,
is. I also want to say, on what you just said there, I don't know if you've Abby Wambach and Glennon Doyle, they talk a lot about like the pay inequities in sports. I think you'd find some of their stuff very interesting. So Abby Wambach she's like a soccer,
yeah, I'm because I get the gist emails for women's sports, so I'm pretty sure.
yeah.
I don't always remember names that well, though. I
Yeah.
remember like no tomorrow because I'm extremely visual, but yes, yes,
She's
yeah.
done a lot for pay equity in sport, for women. And yeah, I can't remember the name of like the group she's part of, but yeah, if you look her up, I'm sure you'll find something. But her stuff is fascinating. And like it's something you don't think about, right? And the idea that women's sports, I mean, we're seeing it very recently. Like the story all along is like people don't want to watch women's sports, so this is why you're being paid less. And now it's like, well, that's been proven wrong. So now what's your story? Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's the common theme throughout the eons. So,
yeah,
but having conversations like this is change it piece by piece, bit by bit, education, awareness, advocacy, most importantly, action taking, empowering yourself first and foremost, ladies. So Dawn, please let us know where we can follow you, and especially let us know a little bit about your future book coming out.
yeah. So I guess my business is Tax Wise. So that's on Facebook and Instagram. And my website is taxwisenl.ca. So that's all things taxes and finance. That's where you can go to find all the information on that. So my first book is called Love, Sex, and Codependence.
Oh,
So it's
spicy.
actually, and it's nothing to do with finance. It's like, it's poetry and short stories. So I mean, it's the two sides of my brain. But it is very much about empowerment, but empowerment through like getting in touch with my emotions and my authenticity and what I actually want and why I act the way I do and all these sorts of ideas.
It's beautiful.
Um, yeah, it's had great feedback so far.
Amazing. Can you
So
hold that
that,
book? I'm gonna take a screenshot
yeah.
with me sticking my tongue out. Okay.
So that's my first book. The second one is in progress. And yeah, so Don Evans Creative is on Instagram, and you can follow me there for like creative writing. Um, I've also used like writing has been such an important tool for me in terms of like managing all the mess that has been the last 5 years since separating. It's been like the thing that has helped me understand who I am, why I act how I do, what I want, how to get it. Like it's how I get in touch with what I actually need and want. And
You
yeah,
really
it's
learned to
just
know thyself through your writing process from the sounds of it.
yeah, it's such an important tool for me. And I don't ever claim to be the best writer, but I am an honest writer, and I feel like that's what people connect with.
Oh yeah. In this day and age, more than ever with AI and all this and that, and being authentic, being vulnerable, sharing our stories, and like I think in my personal opinion, from some of the research I've done, the Me Too movement was kind of the start of this, because as women for eons, we've been I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. We've been like pushed under, burned,
Yeah.
shamed, like of anything that would represent above standing into our power. So
And
we're undoing all these layers.
absolutely. And sharing, I mean, like we have to think about too, like who does it serve for us to be quiet and shameful? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
serve me to be quiet and shameful. It doesn't serve you. Who does it serve? And when you put it in that perspective, that me being quiet and ashamed of my experiences, that's helping my abuser. That's helping oppressors. Like when you frame it that way, it's not like, oh, I'm so afraid somebody will know my numbers or know what I make or know, how I feel or know that I was abused. Like it goes from that to being like, no, this is helping me to say it out loud and it's helping you and it's helping take away all the shame. Like shame is what's really,
It's
it's
debilitating and it doesn't help people move forward. It's one of the worst emotions that you can embrace.
it is, and it's like notorious for abuse survivors. Like it's the number one thing to overcome to find healing and to find self-acceptance and genuine like
Love.
appreciation for yourself and moving forward and like to know your own strengths. Like I would never do this like 2 years ago, I would never be here saying that I'm somebody you should listen to about finances because I was in such debt. Like my income capability was smashed from like all the trauma of trying to co-parent through all this. Like my income earning ability was in the toilet and I had all these lawyer bills and I'm like, and it affected my business and my confidence. I'm like, who am I to talk about this stuff? Like nobody wants to hear from me. Like who am I to talk about debt when I've got debt? Like it's affected so much of my life. But now that I've opened up more about it, like I don't need to be ashamed that he abused me. He should be ashamed that he abused me, you know? And yeah, I'm not serving anybody's interest except his to be quiet and shameful about it. So I'm just not anymore.
Yeah, so you should be proud of yourself for how far you've grown, and it sounds like you're proud of yourself for how far you've grown in the last 2 years. It's the courage to take those steps and speak your truth. Um, that is so powerful. So thank you so much for sharing. So speaking of powerful, and part of this podcast is humor in the face of trauma. And I was recently listening, literally last night, I was listening to a podcast in transition, getting ready for another meeting, about the importance of humor, because statistically, when we were kids, we laughed anywhere from 200 to 300 times a day. Do you want to know how much that statistic drops now when we're adults? And this almost made me cry, especially since I live alone. So I'm laughing about it though. But as adults, we're lucky if we laugh 20 to 30 times a day. I'm tearing up right now because like why I just made a post this week on my social media and my email list is like, don't take life so seriously. No one's getting out of this alive. Like, none of us.
And like even in the depths of despair, like there's still like there's some things that have happened to me that are so awful, they're ridiculous, and all you can do is laugh. I'm like, and when I got to a point where his attacks at me actually became funny, like they were so predictable that they actually became funny. I'm like, I think I've just won divorce. Like I think I've just won abuse. Like if I can find humor in
Yeah.
his attacking me, because it is funny. It's kind of pathetic how, it's funny at this point.
And humor
And
has the power to help us cope with everything that life throws at us, right? So I'm gonna finish today's podcast with two dildo jokes. And for anyone that's watching, if you have any clean, live worthy adult jokes that you would like for me to share, please give me a shout out. Or would you like me to give you a shout out? Please message me, uh, and I'd love to collaborate and share on your part. So, first dildo joke. What's a dildo's favorite vegetable?
what?
A cucumber, but only in the right context. Second, how do dildos greet each other at the party?
Wow.
Hey, long time no see. Let's get this party going. So thank you, Dawn, again for being our guest. And for the viewers, just a reminder that the 6-day Women's Take Back Your Power Beginner Boxing Challenge begins this Monday, March 31st, and goes till Saturday with a live fun a celebration party on the Sunday. You can find more information and sign up for it under leadamaybutton.com, but I will post all the links that we talked about here today for everyone to follow here in the next little bit. So thank you so much again for joining us today, Dawn. Your stories and your professional advice has been very enlightening and educational. And for the rest of you, I hope you have an amazing, awesome, fun Friday and weekend because it's spring. Okay.